Today, I'd like to talk to you about NextJS. To understand where I'm going with this video, you kind of need to have a background knowledge of JavaScript and React and JSX. So that will come with React, so you should know all that all together. And I guess you would need to know a little bit about server-side rendering. I will try and explain it best I can. But you know, if you have any questions, I'll answer in the comments. So go ahead. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the NextJS website. One of the main selling points of NextJS is that it's server-side rendered out of the box. And what that means is it will take your React code, compile it on the server, and spit out HTML and CSS to the front end, static HTML and CSS, which is lightning fast. It has some other features as well to render static HTML, but I'm going to cover those later. At the moment, we're going to start off with getting a new Next.js application started. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hop into my terminal, and I showed you how to set up WSL in a previous video. So I will put a link into that about here or over here, top right or the left of the video. Great, yeah. So now we're in the terminal. Let's just find out what we're doing. Let's make a new directory for tutorials. CD tutorials, and let's look at the documentation that Next.js gives us. So I'm going to click on Start Learning. Oh, this looks fun. So you can see here that all they want you to do really is use the Create Next App package that they provide. So all I'm going to do is run. I'm not going to do this one because I'd like to start from scratch. So let's go ahead. To start a new Next.js project, all we have to do is run this. npx create next app, and then the name of the app, and I'm going to call this blog. I'll go over npx another time and the power of npx, but I think in short terms, basically what it means is npx is going to automatically find that module if it's installed or not. If it's not installed, it will install it and then use it in that command. So you don't have to do npm install -g create next app. Instead, you just run npx create next app and it will save it to cache. So if you want to use it again, you just go npx create next app and you can use your blog. So I'm going to click yes to proceed because I wanted to download it. And that's just going to go ahead and create a blog. Voila, there we are. So I'm going to open this in my VS Code instance like this, code blog. And it's going to greet us with a standard Next.js scaffolding, application scaffolding. So this is what you'll be greeted with after you've installed your Next.js app. You'll see a pages folder, a public folder, a styles folder. Now, the pages folder is where you're going to store your pages. Public folder for all your assets, images, any other CSS or JavaScript you want to include, like front-end modules if you would like to do that. I wouldn't recommend doing it this way, but you can do it this way. And then your styles. So we've got CSS here, and we've also got a CSS module, which I'll go over later on. And then here we have the styles folder, which will include your CSS files and your CSS modules. I will cover CSS modules in a future video, so don't worry about that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building out our blog page, if you would. And I'm going to create a pretty standard, very easy one-pager with some blog posts on it. And what we'll do is further on down the line, we'll integrate this with an API, something like a Node.js based API. I'm thinking something really simple like Strappy, so we can get this application off the ground really quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my terminal and I'm going to cd into our directory, and then I'm going to run npm run dev. Right? Now what that's going to do is that's going to set up the Next.js server, and it's going to host the application on localhost 3000. If I now bring a new tab in and I go to localhost 3000, you'll see here is our Next.js app. Voila, with some links. Now, I'm going to get rid of this to start off with. So we're starting with a blank slate. Let's go with a nice, clean page. Header 1. Call it my blog. If I get rid of this, this is a very scaled back, bare bones page. It will literally have a heading of my blog surrounded by a div. If I go back to that, it's already refreshed it, and here you can see I've got my blog. So the root structure I want to run for this app is something along the lines of this. I want to have my homepage like this, and then I want to have the ability to see an individual post. So we'll have a root which will have a post.id. We'll also have the ability to see a list of categories like this. We could do categories. Oh, ignore that. And I would also like to see a list of posts based on a category that you clicked on. So we'll do categories slash posts in, yes. I'd also like to add a root to be able to see all the posts in a particular category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add category, categories, category, and category ID like this. And then I would like to see posts, right? So I'd like to see the posts within that category. Now, it's quite straightforward so far. So let's get started. I'll comment these out, and I'll add these as I go. In fact, I might add them to the README, so it's quite straightforward. Here you are. So this is our root structure. Right. So the way roots work with NextJS is they generate the roots based off the folder structure and the file structure in the pages folder. So at the moment, the pages represents the root, right? So this will be root/index, or in a browser's case, it will just be root and then blank. So that will be your root page. If I was to add another page here called categories.js, this would be /categories. If I was to export a default function, return a React-based, a little bit of pre-formatting there, and header 1, sorry, and call this categories. There we are. If we go back to our browser and we type categories, find categories. Now, when it comes to nested roots, we need to create a folder. So what we do here is we can create a folder here called categories, right? And we're going to run into an issue straight away. So what happens if we've got a folder called categories and a file called categories? How are we going to route to that categories file? Well, that's quite straightforward. If you think of how the behavior of an index file works, an index, in traditional websites, web servers, they will initially look for the index.html, which is the index of your site. So all we need to do is add an index to this categories folder, and that will effectively represent the first file that is accessed when you search for the categories URL. So we can move this into categories and rename this. I just click F2 there to rename to index.js, because this is the index file of the categories root. Okay, so there you are. I'll go back here and refresh. There's our categories file. I'll go back. There's my blog, and here is our categories file. I'm going to add styles and things later on down the line because I want you to really understand the basics of NextJS. I really want you to understand how NextJS does simple things like generate the URL patterns and how we can get data. So with NextJS, we have the option to get the data server side on each request. We have the ability to get the data on build time, which is extremely powerful if you don't need data, if you don't need a page to be dynamic, if you don't need a page to be rendered by data all the time. You can have a static, you could get static props, which will basically go and get that data on build time and generate that page to be static HTML. That's really powerful. There is a third one, there's get initial props, but according to the documentation, they actually recommend against using it and sticking with either get static props or get server-side props, giving you that ultimate control, I guess.